Hey everyone, it's Kep here. This is going to be a quick little video on the Sybaris Incarnon. I have been waiting for this for a long freaking time. The Sybaris and the Tigress were both weapons that I really wanted Incarnons for. We did get the Sybaris one, but we haven't gotten the Tigress one just yet, which is big sad. But I am very happy to tell you that this weapon is really awesome and it feels great. The Sybaris for a while for me has been kind of one of these weapons that just felt good. It's kind of always felt really good. And the Sybaris really does have some sentimental value for me because I grew up watching Quiet Shy, or Quiet Shallow, as some of you might know. She is a super awesome YouTuber who specialized and made a lot of Warframe content back in the days, and for various reasons, she stopped making content on Warframe, and she has kind of peaked in and out of the community over and over again. But her main weapon was the Sybaris. She was a Banshee main, and she played with the Sybaris, and I also played with the Sybaris because little 13-year-old Kepchep absolutely love this gun. So it is very sentimental, and I'm very happy that the Sybaris Incarnon is actually super good. So I am going to get right into it. I'm not going to make you guys wait because there's probably a million other videos coming out about this weapon. But yeah, so the primary fire without the Incarnon is not the greatest, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna try and sugarcoat it and tell you that this is the best thing ever. I will actually do a test for you with all the mods stacked up because we do have a bunch of stacks over here. And you can see it's like kind of really struggling to, you know, uh, get it up, I guess, which is a really awful way of saying it. But as we get our stacks on our galvanized scope, our galvanized chamber, as well as our primary deadhead, then you can see it is going to do a pretty decent amount of damage, which is pretty nice. So when we are all stacked up, we are definitely going to be killing enemies, but the ramp up is pretty slow. For the Incarnon mode, we are going to swap into this. This Sybaris looks amazing with those little tendrils wrapping around it. This is going to fire a 4-round burst that deals blast damage. You can see kind of immediately, this is a lot better. A lot better. Its Incarnon mode is way stronger than its primary mode, which is kind of hard to find on Incarnon weapons nowadays. Normally and typically with an Incarnon weapon, both the primary and the secondary fire are going to be baseline really good. The secondary fire is way better on the Sybaris Incarnon. You can see we are doing a lot of AoE damage. Now you might think to yourself, why is it doing so much AoE damage? This is kind of weird. It does have blast damage, and blast damage was reworked with the Jade Shadows update, and I'll explain to you why this is super important. You can also see over here in the Evolution 1, it just says fire 4-round bursts and gain blast status. Why this is super important, also don't look at the build, don't look at the build, don't look at the build. Why this is super important is because this blast status is guaranteed blast. And what I mean by that is if you shoot an enemy, every shot that you do will apply the blast status effect. I cannot state how buttfuck overpowered that is, and there are other Incarnons which will say that they gain an element. There's a lot of Incarnons that'll tell you that they gain heat or something like that, and those Incarnons don't actually gain the guaranteed heat proc. They just deal heat damage and rely on their status procs. This is completely the other way around, so it is very cool to have guaranteed blast procs, especially because stacking those up to 10 will expedite the damage from the blast procs, and it'll basically turn it into an AoE weapon, which you're going to see after we go through the mods and everything like that, that this can result in some really big AoE damage, which is super duper cool. The first, or I guess the second evolution choice is going to be Well Rehearsed and Blazing Barrel. Well Rehearsed is going to increase your base damage by plus 15. This plus 15 increase is not conditional. It doesn't need any special thing or doohickey to trigger this effect. It is going to be on your weapon all the time. And the conditional buff for this hiccup. The conditional buff for this specific tier is going to be that it increases the base damage by plus 5 and it stacks up to 3 times. Now, you might see 15 or plus 15 damage, and you might think to yourself, like, that's barely anything. But why this is important is because it is targeting the base damage values. So these are our base damage values over here. And why this is really important is because all of our damage mods scale from these base damage values. So when you are adding on top of the base damage, it is a much, much more aggressive way to scale your base damage. And that's why I'm using Well Rehearsed instead of Blazing Barrel. When people see the Sybaris Incarnon, their first gut reaction might be to go to Blazing Barrel because it does give you multi-shot, and we know that multi-shot's really good. But being able to double our base damage is incredibly, incredibly strong because it means that all the other multipliers we have on this weapon are extremely aggressive. But Blazing Barrel will also grant you with the plus 15%, or not percent, but the plus 15 base damage. And on firing, it gives you plus 5% multi-shot, which stacks up to 10 times, which, if you don't want to do the math, it's only 50%. 50% multi-shot is really kind of a nothing burger when it comes to the amount of multi-shot we can gain off of Galvanized Chamber and some other mods. So definitely not worth it whatsoever. If they buff this up to a 100% multi-shot, then maybe I would consider using it. But as it is right now, Well Rehearsed is super, super nice. Especially because it is on consecutive headshots, and I think that's just really cool. That it's going to prioritize prioritize a little bit more skill to use the weapon. I do like precision weapons. For Evolution 3, we have the option of Extended Volley, Ready Retaliation, and Marksman's Hand. All of these are super simple. We get plus 12 base magazine capacity, which turns our Sybaris from a 20 magazine to a 32. This does not affect the Incarnon mode, which is cringe. So we really have no reason to use this. 20 magazine is plenty to charge your Incarnon meter. Ready Retaliation is pretty nice. On reload from empty, plus 60% reload speed. This is pretty nice if you are going in and out of your Incarnon form. However, the Sybaris Incarnon has a lot of ammo. So when you're in the Incarnon form, you're going to be in there for a long time, so I don't particularly think this is super useful. We also have Marksman's Hand over here, and this is minus 60% recoil, which is very, very nice, considering this also benefits from consecutive headshots. So having minus 60% recoil is going to help us a ton and a ton. Now on to the final evolution, and this is where it gets super duper interesting. We have Survivor's Edge, which you've already seen before, which gives plus 5% critical chance and 10% status chance. These are not, you know, normal crit chance and status chance mods. These are targeting the base values of the mods, aka when we click on this, instead of having 30 crit chance, our base crit chance is 35. I explained why this is really important over here in the Evolution 2, is because it targets the base values of that stat, meaning our mods scale much more aggressively. We have Elemental Dominance, which is kind of really weird. I don't know why this exists. I think maybe this might be like bugged and they intended for this to be like a higher effect. But Elemental Dominance increases the base status chance by plus 5%, and then it also doubles that in the Incarnon form, which is kind of odd because our Incarnon form gains 40 or 35? Over here we gain 10 status chance, and over here we also gain 10 status chance, but only in our Incarnon form. I think this is supposed to be higher. It doesn't make much sense. I feel like this should at least be like, I don't know, like 30% or something like that to be viable. This is a very weird number to have in here. But the bread and butter is going to be Reaver's Rapture, which is a sick name. On full burst hit, plus 20% damage that resets on reload. It doesn't tell you, but this does cap out, but still, it is super, super, super nice. I really, really like this one, and I'll explain. Well, I don't need to explain later. I can explain to you why this is really good. Specifically because we are able to increase the base damage of our weapon by quite a lot, because we are getting another source of plus damage. This basically means that if we use Reaver's Rapture with Well Rehearsed, we just get a lot and a lot of damage buffing potential out of this weapon. And the base damage is not particularly super good, so being able to buff up our base damage like that by quite a lot is going to be very nice. Obviously, I don't know the exact math about it, but I won't bore you guys with that. So we have Galvanized Chamber and Galvanized Scope. Galvanized Scope, because this is kind of a headshot weapon, which I do really like. Galvanized Chamber is super obvious. We want all this multi-shot. Multi-shot's super nice for us. We are running primary deadhead as well. This is going to make it so that our weapon has 0 recoil whatsoever, and it also gives us another headshot multiplier with plus 30%, and this does give us more base damage that will scale very aggressively with our weapon's base damage already. So definitely everything kind of comes together with the arcane as well as the evolutions to give us a lot of base damage. It's actually why we're not using Galvanized Aptitude here. Galvanized Aptitude, I'd normally say, is a really good option 9 times out of 10. But because the Sybaris Prime does have access to so much base damage, we actually really don't need this, and we can spec harder into Galvanized Scope over here, which is very, very cool. Galvanized Scope is pretty obvious. Not obvious, I'd say, but we do have a lot of crit chance on this build. So actually, if I really wanted to, I could actually get rid of critical delay over here and then put in some other mod, which I will mess around with in this video and see what other fun things we can come up with. But yeah, Galvanized Scope, super good. It is a precision weapon. We are going to be aiming for heads a lot on this, so this is exactly what we might want. Vital Sense is very obvious because our crit chance is going to be very high with the Sybaris. It is technically supposed to be a crit weapon. Rifle Elementalist, this is really, really good because it's going to increase the damage of our blast multiplicatively by 90%. Basically meaning this is doubling our blast damage. It's not exactly doubling it because it is 90% status damage and blah, 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 blah. But it is doing a ton and a ton for our build. And I can show you the comparison between having Elementalist on and having Elementalist off as well. But yeah, the 0.6 punch through is going to be very, very useful because it is kind of technically supposed to be a single target weapon. Having a little bit of punch through is going to help us a lot, especially building up that Incarnon meter if enemies are lining up. But when we're in our Incarnon mode, we don't worry too much about the punch through, but it still will help us rip through crowds because if you are getting guaranteed blast procs on the first enemy you shoot, and then the enemy behind it as well is getting that, then those are both going to be sources of AoE damage. And it's going to mean that you're basically doubling what your AoE is instead of targeting a single enemy. So the punch through is a little bit less useful on the Incarnon mode, but it's still definitely very, very good. I have critical delay over here for even more crit chance. The crit chance on this build is super duper heavy, but I kind of like it that way. You do gain a lot and a lot of damage on upgrading crit tiers. So when you have all of your crit chance mods coming together, you're going to do a lot of extra damage, basically. We have Malignant Force and Rhyme Rounds over here to make viral. This is because of the armor nerfs that we received. Armor doesn't quite provide the unique damage reduction that it used to. And it means that it kind of opens us up to being able to mod for some interesting things. And I think having access to Viral Blast is a really, really strong combination because we are basically making them plus 325% more vulnerable to health damage. And the new damage that we do with Blast in the AoE is basically kind of making it like this like pseudo viral slash build, except for we're not relying on damage over time. We're relying on how many shots we can hit in order to expedite the blast proc from the Sybaris Incarnon. And finally, you can see that I have a Riven over here. I actually really, really love my Riven. My Riven gives me, who would have guessed, more critical chance. It gives us a ton of fire rate and a great 60% reload speed. Do remember that reload speed does give you, it helps with the time to swap in and out of the Incarnon mode, and weapons that have a large Incarnon magazine tend to have a longer reload, so the plus 60% reload is very, very appreciated. This is not so much of a damage riven as it is like a really nice quality of life, although the 169.8% critical chance is very, very well appreciated. Considering the Sybaris Prime does have a 4 out of 5 Riven disposition, so we are getting some really nice stats. Another really nice thing about this Riven is it is minus puncture. Puncture is a good status to have, and this Riven would be much better if it was minus impact, but at the end of the day, we are going to be prioritizing our viral just a little bit more, and that is going to be good because it is going to prime for our blast, which is the main source of damage. As for our Excel slot over here, we're running Vigilante Supplies. This is just specifically for the 15% chance to enhance the critical hits from our primary weapon. Gaining another crit tier occasionally will help deal a lot of damage. There's definitely some other things in here that you could use. I would say I lied. I lied. I'm a liar. Like, I would say if you're not using primary deadhead, you could go for stabilizer, and then that would make sense. But really, this is kind of the only mod you're gonna want to be using here. All of these other ones are very, very mid. DE, please give us some better XLS options for primaries. For melee weapons, sure, Tennokai is great. There's tons of different Tennokai. There's some weapons that can utilize it, but like for primaries, like come on, like this sucks. It's basically vigilante supplies and whatever ammo conversion mod, and then if it's not that, it's just like minus recoil, and if it's not minus recoil, it's hush, and then everything else is just no reason to have it. Anyways, that was a little rant. Anyways, there is a ton of options that we can put here, and if you do not have a Riven, I highly recommend you running Prime Shred instead, and you can just live with not having the reload speed. But Prime Shred will help you a ton. There's probably some other great options over here. Instead of Prime Shred, you could also put in Hammer Shot, or instead of Critical Delay, you could also put in Hammer Shot. Both of these are going to benefit you a ton and a ton. As for the reason I'm running critical delay is because I have the positive fire rate to offset that, so my fire rate is still really good, the weapon's very comfy, and I still get those super, super nice crit tiers, which we do have a 6.6 times critical multiplier in our Incarnon form, which is super, super nice. But yeah, I'm going to run it through again. I'm going to show you what this looks like with Caliban's buffs and debuffs. Actually, I'm going to respawn these guys so they're all in a nice little line for me. I will also show you what 0.6 meters of punch through looks like, aka we're going to be affecting both of these enemies as well, and then I think we'll get like 2 or 3 enemies through these guys. Or this guy's fat head is going to block them all here. I'll line them up this way. Yeah, it's going to be stupid. Sometimes the hitboxes for small amounts of punch through is a little bit disappointing, but for the most part, we are able to shoot through enemies and such when we need to. This guy is getting affected. But yeah, we just head into our Incarnon mode and we make sure that we're aiming for the head, and we are going to get some super aggressive blast proc damage. When our multi-shot is built up, basically what is happening is because every one of our bullets has a guaranteed chance to, not a guaranteed chance, a guaranteed blast proc. With multi-shot, we are reaching 10 blast procs, which is expediting those and doing a huge burst of AoE damage. So I'm pretty sure the AoE for blast procs is only about 3 meters, but still, that is incredibly valuable because with, yeah. So you can see, when I shoot an enemy here, basically, all these enemies, the second I shoot them, we're going through all 10 blast procs, and then some. It just depends on how lucky we get for the thing. So it's technically a single target weapon, but because we are able to expedite these blast procs like so aggressively and so quickly, it's like a pseudo AoE gun, which is really, really cool. I actually love the idea of having viral blasts. And as you can see, even with armor, these level 205 corrupted heavy gunners steel path are still dying incredibly fast. Let's strip their armor really quick. We're going to strip their armor, do a little bit of damage because it's Caliban. It gets even more aggressive when you strip armor, and we are now doing 1.1 million in blast procs, 427,000 in blast procs as well. Very, very, very scary. Definitely super spooky. These enemies just kind of fall over and die because we have a ton and a ton of blast damage. This does get better though because we can armor strip as well as make them vulnerable to damage with our Sentient Wrath. So that's 1.9 million, 1.3, 952,000, 1.9. Definitely a ton and a ton of blast damage coming from this weapon. And as you might know, blast damage after the Jade Shadows update is super duper good. But yeah, so that's Caliban. I'm gonna swap this over. I'm gonna go through a couple of frames. Another really good damage buffing frame is going to be Mirage. So I'm gonna show you what my Mirage looks like. I did pull those enemies, and they are permanently armor stripped. So I'm just gonna really quickly kill them and respawn them. Mirage is obviously going to be incredibly strong. We already know what Mirage does. Um, I think I have 886% on her Eclipse without stacking my Molt Augmented, so it is super strong. And you can see we're going to be hitting 1.3 million in our blast damage without actually priming them and armor stripping them and everything like that, so it's definitely super duper funny, the damage that we can do. Just for funsies, I will armor strip them with my pillage over here. And now let's see. 4.5 million. 1.6 million. Yeah, we can definitely do a lot and a lot of damage with the Sybaris Incarnon with Mirage. Some other great options are going to be, Hydroid is always super duper nice. My Hydroid setup actually has Nourish because it makes sense to have it on him. So we're going to pop Nourish, we're going to come over here and we're going to pop Plunder. And, yeah, having access to Viral, Blast, and Corrosive is going to give us a huge damage boost. Our AoE damage is not going to be quite as aggressive, but our single target damage is going to be much, much heavier because we are going to be doing Viral, Corrosive, and Blast at the same time. So singular enemies will die a lot quicker when it comes to Hydroid, but the group is going to stay just about the same. There could be a really cool synergy with Garuda as well. Because our fourth ability is going to scale off of the blast damage that we do. Let's see. That didn't actually swap it into Incarnon mode. There we go. The blast damage that we're doing is not triggering the bleed. Okay. Look at that. I learned something new today. I assumed that the damage they took from the blast AoE would actually trigger that bleed, but it does not. We can obviously give this to Saren. Saren, you already know the answer. Saren's just gonna fuck this weapon up. Like, you can give Saren anything, and it will immediately become like the most OP thing in the world. Yeah, these blast procs I think are also doing toxin damage. I do believe. Yeah. Yeah. So, hey, this is acid shells, but even better. Sarin plus blast is a disgusting and scary thing, and I wouldn't want to wish this on anyone, because yeah, I don't think I need to explain quite why this is so strong. But yeah, I'm gonna go back to my boy Caliban. I quite literally have been maining him ever since the update came out, so yeah, I'm bugged with the Bloodshed Sigil as well, which is actually looks kind of fucking cool, I'm not gonna lie to you. Anyways, you guys have a lovely time, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and yeah, goodbye.